My name is Pam Chrysosimo, and this summer I've been working at a lab at UCSD. Basically, my job has been to isolate plasma DNA for injections, injections for mice, that is. I'm a double major at Stanford, at least I hope to be at this point. I'm undeclared, so I'm majoring in bio, and eventually I want to go to med school, so volunteering at a laboratory seemed like a pretty good idea, and I've actually learned a phenomenal amount. I came into the lab at ground zero, not knowing anything about molecular bio, and now I've learned a lot this summer. So my job is to make DNA basically, and in order to make DNA, I need to go through two major steps. And the first step is growing up the buds or bacteria, and the second step is going through a process which breaks down the bugs, breaks down the bacteria, the cell walls, and removes the proteins and stuff, and then isolate the DNA from that. So what I'm going to describe is how to start a culture of DNA, start a small culture of DNA, and that's called inoculation. So the first thing I need to do is figure out what number the plasma is. For example, today my boss told me that I have to make a culture of NCMB B71 tomorrow. So in order to do that, I need to grow the bugs up overnight. And so I go into her catalog of DNA, and the number for NCMV is 32, so I need to remember that number because when I go into the freezer, there's a lot of DNA in a lot of tubes with certain numbers on them, so instead of wasting my time looking through on the labels of all of the tubes, there are numbers on the top, so I just remember the number 32. So the first thing that Delphine taught me was to label everything. So I get a piece of colored tape and write the number 32. You need three things when you label. You need the name of what it is, the date, and your initials. And so I put number 32, NCMV, B71. The date is 8/27/96, and PC are my initials. And I stick the colored tape on a 3 milliliter. Actually, I get a 10 ml culture tube, and I'll put 3 mils of LB into it. And LB is Loria broth, and Loria broth is the media for which the media in which the bacteria, the bugs grow. So I take out 3 mils of LV into the culture tube, and in order to cut that amount, we need to be precise. So we have a tool called the pipette aid, and it's kind of a suction thing. In chemistry, use bulbs, but this is more of a mechanic thing. And we stick the pipette into the pipette aid and suction up 3 mils of LB. And we put 3 mils of this LB into the culture tube. And after that, I need this plasma has to be ampicillin resistant, so we go into the freezer, and in my box I have a little tube of A100, and A100 stands for ampicillin 100 grams per milliliter. And since this is frozen, I have to take the ampicillin out of the freezer and put it on a heat block in order to thaw it, because you can't remove things out of you can't pipette out of something that is frozen. So I put it on the heat block, and once it is thawed, I get a different thing called a pipette men. It's blue, and we use to pipette different small amounts. So I pipette up 3 microliters, which we call them, written is lambda, LAMBDA, and that's a Greek letter. And I pipette 3 lambda of the thawed ampicillin, and I'll inject that into the 3 mils of LB. And so now any bacteria, any bugs that grow in this LB will be ampicillin resistant, and so then I make sure to put that back in the freezer because that needs to be frozen and it can't be left outside. And after that's ready, I make sure the cap is on and the label's on and make sure everything is okay. And then I need to go into the freezer room in order to get my bugs. And so now that the media is ready and the culture tube is ready and everything is labeled, then I go into the freezer room, and the bacteria is stored at negative 80 degrees Celsius. So I make sure before I start, I always have my gloves on because these things are biohazardous. So I take my tray where I have my 10 ml culture tube, and then I take my pipette men, a box of pipette tips, and also, and that's it. And I go into the freezer room, and I open the negative 80 degree freezer, and I pull up the box, the deep box where the bacteria is stored. So I pull out the box, and then I look for number 32. So then I take out my little tube which has 32 on it, and I put the rest of the box, I close the rest of the box and put it back in the freezer because you don't want all of the other things to be thawing out at once. So you make sure to close that. And so I have my pipette with my box of pipette tips. And so I scrape a little bit, using my pipette tip, I scrape a little bit of the NCMV B71 with the end of my tip, and put a little chunk of that into the 3 mils of LB plus amp. So I put that in there, and then I pipette up and pipette down in order to remove anything that might have gotten stuck in the pipette. And then if the glycerol stock is too frozen and you can't isolate a trunk, then you take out some of the LB, pipette up, and squirt some of that room temperature LB into the frozen glycerin stock in order to soften it so you have sort of a slushy mush. And then you can remove some of the bacteria that's frozen there because it's softened. And then you can remove a chunk from there. And so after you've done that, you scrape a little bit, and then you put it into the LB amp, and then you twist the cover back on and put it back in the negative 80 degree freezer. And so only that is chilled only a little bit, gotten a little bit warmer. And so you put it back and make sure nothing else has thawed. And then so you have that into solution because it defrosts pretty quickly. So you have your bugs in solution, and you make sure to dispose of your pipette tip in the hazardous waste because it's biohazardous and you don't want anything else to be growing out of there. And then you take the 3 ml culture tube that's labeled and you put it into the shaker room. And the shaker room is where my bugs will grow overnight. But when I'm doing a small culture, first of all you need to turn down the shaker so that it's not turning so fast. So you turn it down and then you wait until it comes to a complete stop. And after that you put the 10 milliliter culture tube on the shaker, and then you turn it up and you close the door. It's kept at 37 degrees, and so you make sure that the shaker comes on again because a lot of people have different stuff growing on there. And after that, after it's done, you let it incubate for about 6 to 7 hours or however long you're working there. And so you need to inoculate a big culture. And right before you leave, you take the small culture, you have 3 mils, and then you take the small culture and separate that,